When securing our service layer, we will find that we use the Spring Security pre-authorize annotation the most. It's not very common to use the post-authorize annotation, so we'll find ourselves using this pre-authorize annotation quite frequently to require authorization to invoke the methods on our service layer. One thing to remember about the pre-authorize annotation is that it is a Spring-specific annotation, and it will couple our code to the Spring Security Framework. The good thing is, Spring developers are very aware of this fact, and they do not try to lock us into the framework. In fact, they support the use of the roles allowed annotation, which is part of the JSR 250 package. So it is a standard annotation that can be used across different implementations of security frameworks so that we do not couple our security code to Spring. So before we begin using the roles allowed annotation, we just need to make sure that we have support for the JSR 250 annotations. Sometimes you need to download them via Maven in the pom.xml file, but in our case, they are included in our Pivotal TC server. So if we look, we see the annotations-api.jar, and within there is the javax.annotation, security, and then we have the roles allowed annotation that we will be using in our course. Now, before we go using this annotation, we need to enable its use by specifying an attribute on our global method security tag. So all we need to do is add the JSR 250 annotations attribute, and then we just switch it over to enabled. And at this point, we can use JSR 250 annotations such as roles allowed. So now we can navigate back to our appointment controller, and we can switch over our pre-authorized annotations to roles allowed annotations. Now, the big thing to remember when using roles allowed is that we're no longer going to use our expression language. We simply just put the authority within double quotes as the first element in the annotation, and that's going to say what role is required in order to invoke this method. Another thing to remember is that we can provide a comma-separated list of authorities. So we can say that the role_user authority is also required to invoke this method, but we're going to keep this as the admin at this point. And we'll go down and we will replace our other pre-authorize annotation, and we'll just add the roles allowed annotation, make sure we have our double quotes surrounding our authority, and that's all it takes. We have now swapped out our pre-authorized annotations with our roles allowed annotation that is compliant with the JSR 250 standard. So if we save this, we can now restart our server. And from there, we can navigate to our browser, and we'll attempt to sign in and use one of those pre-authorized annotations. So I'm going to sign in with the administrative user, kbowersox password, and then we're going to go into the appointment, and we can mark it as complete. And there we see that the roles allowed standard annotation functioned identically to our pre-authorized annotation. So in this lesson, we learned how to use the roles allowed annotation, which is part of the standard Java annotations package. This annotation can be used to replace Spring Security's commonly used pre-authorize annotation in order to make authorization decisions on the methods within our beans.